Before we get to this week's episode of Business Over a Brew, let me tell you about my friends at Roberts Motors. You know, one of our favorite episodes here on the show was when we had a chance to sit down with Sam and John Roberts. If you haven't had a chance to watch that episode, go back and take a look at it. It's great to see the interaction between not only two business partners, but of course father and son as well. They really epitomize what a local business is all about. Number one, doing business the right way, giving back to the community. If you have a chance, you may not buy a car from there, but at least give them the opportunity. Shop robertsmotors.com. You get more at Roberts Motors Ford. More selection, more value. Each vehicle they sell comes with the Roberts Rewards Value Package, which includes oil changes for 2 years, loaner cars, car washes, and much more. Get more at Roberts Motors Ford. Check them out at robertsmotors.com. Now enjoy this week's episode of Business Over a Brew. Welcome to Business Over a Brew. Pleased to be joined in this episode by a friend of mine and a gentleman I've learned a lot from a business standpoint, owner of Gulf Shores Restaurant and Grill, Harry Parker. Harry, thanks for coming on the show.
Good to be with you, Nick. Good to be with you, buddy.
Let's start with just tell us a little bit about Gulf Shores Restaurant. When did it open? Where did the idea come from?
Well, Gulf Shores Restaurant and Grill was sort of came about as I was reinventing myself, okay, if you will. I spent 28 years in corporate America as a corporate officer and was able to retire early. And so sitting around at about 51 years old with a full retirement, thinking, what the heck am I going to do now? I was born and raised in New Orleans. Daddy was born and raised in Alabama. And mom and dad could really, really cook. And I always loved to cook. So I thought, I think I'm going to open a restaurant. And so I sat with mom and dad and got their recipes, and then I decided that I really was going to do this. So I invested a significant part of my retirement, hired a restaurant location company. They said the best place for the concept was St. Louis, Missouri. I had never been to St. Louis, Missouri, and so we took mom and dad recipes, took the name Gulf Shores out of Gulf Shores, Alabama, because Daddy was a Mobile, Alabama boy, cooked all over there. And in the fashion of the Clampetts, we loaded up the truck and we moved to St. Louis.
Where were you living at the time?
At the time, I was actually coming from Shanghai, China.
Oh, really?
I was president of DuPont China, and was coming back from over there. And so when we came back, our first stop was O'Fallon, Missouri, is where we built our house there, and we started out and trying to do the restaurant business. Yeah.
What do you remember about that first day of opening the location in Creve Coeur?
Well, it was really exciting. What I did though is that so that I could understand some about the restaurant business, because I knew nothing, is that I gave myself as free labor. So there was a company that was out in Minnesota, and I signed up with that company and worked as free labor. So I could really understand how to run a restaurant. So it wasn't a total shock to me, but it was very, very exciting. A new restaurant. We had invested quite a bit of money, so it was like shiny new and everything. We decided that we had tried the little franchise thing also as a part of getting to know it too, and we decided, you know what, we can do this. We can do this, and that's how we started it. 17 years ago, we moved to St. Louis. 19 years ago, and 17 years ago, they put us in a place called Creve Coeur, Missouri. We never heard of it, and that's where that first restaurant is.
So really, for 2 years, you kind of were letting the idea marinate, and you didn't jump into it with just a wing and a prayer. You really did a lot of research and were prepared to go into it.
Well, one of the benefits I had, Nick, was, like I said, I spent 28 years in corporate America, and if there's anything, when people have their ideas about what they really want to do, before you invest your money, kick the tires on it. And to me, there's no better way to kick the tires on a new concept, if it's around, is offer yourself as free labor. I mean, because the odds are that if you go into that business for the first year or two, you're not going to make enough money to live off of it anyway. Okay, you'll be probably live off your savings. So extend your savings a little bit, give yourself as free labor, and focus on understanding not only what you should do in terms of restaurant, but some things that you should never do in terms of running a business.
That was going to be my next question. One thing that you learned that, okay, here's what we're going to implement that. That's a great idea. And one thing that you saw and said, that's not what we're going to do.
Yeah, that's true, right? I mean, every business, there's about 3 or 4 key elements to a business success. In the restaurant business, they talk about your food costs, they talk about your labor costs, but the biggest single element, and probably in the restaurant business, any business, is the people element of it. And that's where I see a lot of privately owned businesses fall short, the people element.
And you've had an interesting practice of how you hire and recruit people and the people that work there. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, what I try to do is like I've always felt that to give people a second chance. I mean, fortunately, I didn't have like a halo over my head, but I made the right decisions. I took the right steps, and God always blessed me to keep me out of harm's way. Some people didn't. I never played around with drugs or any of those kind of things. But unfortunately, there are a lot of people in this country and in this world, and I saw this even when I was living abroad, that did get in trouble and so forth. The issue is that when those people have now made the right decision that they want to have their life and do some things, maybe get their family back, in most cases, if you have the word felon behind your name, you can't get a job.
Right.
In most cases, if you have the word drug addict or recovering drug addict, you can't get a job. And so what we do is that we focus, I learned how to interview very well. Our first part is to focus on those folks who have the word felon behind their name, but want now to have a life and have a family. Our females and males who were a recovering drug addict, because once you're there, you're always going to be recovering, but want to have a life, want to take care of their family. What we do, I call those America's forgotten employees. We give those folks jobs, and they come in and they're just so happy to do a job. Now, not 100%. Nothing is 100%, but I'm very satisfied. We've done that now we're 17 years old. We're 2 restaurants strong. We'll be a 3rd restaurant strong. We've done that, and those folks come into Gulf Shores, and they take care of the place. They love the place.
So 17 years ago, opened the Creve Coeur location, and obviously got that up and going, and then several years ago opened the Edwardsville location. Talk about that decision to expand to a second location.
Well, I tell you, never in my life did I think I would be in the restaurant business. It started off as something to keep myself busy and everything, but once we got into it, I really liked it. I really did like it, and I liked what I saw in terms of the kids. I'm not an old senior, but I'm 67 years old, so I'm there. And what I see a lot now is, what the kids really need, role models. I think the thing that has cost us, the single moms, the single dads, everybody working, I think what it's cost us is role models for the kids. My mom and dad, they pretty much pointed me direction. They told me and so forth. And so what I quickly found out was that these kids weren't doing anything intentionally. When I say kids, I mean in their mid-20s or whatever, is that they just didn't know what to do. And so when I stepped in and became a role model, I saw kids blossoming. I saw my business blossoming. I saw good things happening. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to do this again. So I went back to the same company and say, I'm going to do a second location. And they said, listen, if you're looking for a place that's up and coming, it's not there yet, but it's up and coming, give you some uptime, go to Edwardsville, Illinois. Again, I'd never been to Edwardsville, Illinois, but I figured, you know what, this company, they've done me right. And so we opened up the second restaurant in Edwardsville about almost 8 years ago.
You're 67, I'm 44, so we kind of grew up about a generation apart.
Yeah.
And we were just kind of talking earlier, before we came on camera, about the differences between how your generation grew up, just with how my generation grew up in terms of the work ethic and what your parents made you do. Talk a little bit about your upbringing, and I'm going to bet that your parents made you, put you to work.
My parents put me to work at a very early age, okay? But the biggest difference I see now is and what I came up with in my generation is that you did as you were told. Mom and dad, they said, hey, here's what you do, and you do as you were told. The biggest difference I see now in the generation that's maybe even after you is that the kids they don't bring the energy and the enthusiasm to do as they're told, but they do as they see you do. Okay. If I was consulting restaurant owners or maybe even business owner, I would say, get into your business, be a role model, because the kids' definition today of what a business owner is a guy that comes in or maybe shows up every other day, sits back, sees what's wrong, tells everybody to fix it, hops in his car and drives off. They never really see him do anything and so forth.
With a trunk full of cash.
Absolutely. Yes, that's right. It's very much analogous to me going into the restaurant and say, hey, listen, I want the food to go out hot, okay? But when I walk in the restaurant's full, the window is full of food, and I'm sitting there because I'm the king and I'm too good to do it. So what I've seen now is that when I think that in many ways, business owners today have to debunk that theory. That is not at all what a business owner does. Business owner worries about the business, but the business owner doesn't do enough to show about, and most business owners say, well, I'm paying you, so do your job. Mm-hmm. That's my generation. My generation was, my dad says, you're being paid, son, do your work.
Right.
That's not it. And this generation, they go, wow, Harry really wants to win. He's running food. He's busting tables. He's doing all those kind of things. And you know what? I want to help him win. So that's the big difference in the generation. It is.
That's interesting. And you mentioned a third location, and you kind of already have a third location on wheels right now. You just came here from, you've got a great food truck that you invested in. Talk a little bit about that investment in that branch of the business.
I think the food truck is, the food truck really was a survival. It was a thing we did out of survival.
Right.
2 years ago when COVID hit, I realized, I'd always thought that, wow, our income stream is primarily dine-in, okay? And when Illinois got hit, now Missouri wasn't quite as bad, but Illinois restaurants got hit really hard because the governor's impact on the business was very, very tough.
Sure.
And so I started the food truck, and I said, listen, I knew people really loved our food, but I said, I have two things. One, I have to take it out to them. And second thing, for a business owner, listen, there's just going to be so many times that it's, oh, woe is me. Oh, woe is me. And I think that you have to avoid that as a business owner, as a leader. And sometimes in the darkest times, during the most darkest times, there's opportunities. And then there's the opportunity to invest. So what I did is that at a time when everybody was thinking, you must be out of your mind, I invested in a state-of-the-art food truck. Okay? I took advantage of the fact that I did it because I needed the restaurant in Edwardsville to survive. I mean, when you go from whatever you're going to zero, which is what the governor pretty much did,
right,
to the restaurant business, you can sit there and you can go, oh, it's me, am I going to die? And I refuse to die like that. I refuse to give up. And so I invested in the food truck. We took advantage of the fact that the likes of Amazon, Worldwide Technologies, shut down their cafeterias, but still had, even at 30% of the people, still had 200-300 people to feed per shift. We took advantage of that. And so during a time when most restaurants were, laying off people, totally employed, we couldn't keep our service going because for a while there was nothing, there was no takeout or anything, but we kept the people in our kitchen working, and we kept our bills paid up, and we stayed alive.
As I'm hearing your story, and I've heard it a little bit before, you've really taken at least three major risks. One, opening the first location. Two, the second location was a big risk. The food truck is a risk because it's all heavy capital that has to be invested into that. Talk a little bit about how you view risk. What would you consider yourself somebody that has a high risk tolerance?
No, I mean, you know what, I don't, because what I do, I think that risk is for people who go into things and don't know what they're doing. Don't try to go. Now, I did not know about the restaurant business. Risk would have been me investing $1 million in a restaurant and not knowing anything what it's about. Okay, right. And I think that sometimes people feel that you can't go and find out. You can go and find out. I.e., example, what I did in terms of working as free labor for a year in a restaurant. I.e., what I did going around looking at various food trucks trying to understand. So, and I can tell you this, what I learned in the food truck is that if you have a commissary, and I have two in the restaurants, then you're better off in trying to run a food truck, just running a food truck on its own. Because the best thing you can hope for in a food truck is to run out of food that evening.
Right.
The worst thing you can happen in a food truck is to run out of food that evening, okay? So I got to understand those things. So I don't see it so much as a risk taker, but I do believe in the fact is that when it seems the odds are down and you can't do anything, you have to really think hard, and you really have to apply survival. Survival is not so. that part of it.
Right. You touched on the recipes coming from your family and your mom and dad in particular. I know there's a health component to it as well because of some health issues your dad was having. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, my dad was from a little boy growing up in Alabama. He always smoked. Okay, and so of course, and later on, and when in his 70s, okay, he had high blood pressure, really bad. He had lung cancer. Okay, and he was set upon doing whatever he really wanted to do, but my mother was set upon keeping him alive. Okay, so my mother did things like mixed her own spices. It was really cool what she did. She gave my dad a head fake. She would mix so many different spices and so forth, because she was very familiar with spices. He never missed a salt. Okay, she would also do things like fix some of his other things with non-fat butter, butter alternative and so forth. And so what I did is that I took those things. And so one of the reasons is that people think that of course we do make our own sauces and our own fish batters to be authentic, but we also make it because there's a healthy portion on it. Okay, we're probably one of the only seafood restaurants, Cajun seafood restaurants, that we do not encourage people. We have fried items in our menu, but we don't encourage our customers to come in and have something fried every day. We say to you, listen, we have seafood on the menu, but you can have it your way. And you can have it sauteed, you can have it blackened, you can have it all these other ways. And guess what? We don't charge you anything extra for doing it that way. A customer that's alive is a customer for a longer period of time, right?
Right. Yeah, the longer they stay alive,
that's
the better.
Right, the longer I live. Right.
And you've got just a great, diverse menu. I love the pastas and salads as well. So just a really great restaurant and a great success story. I know also one of the things that you probably don't want to brag about much, but I'll brag a little bit, is you're very heavily involved from a community standpoint as well.
Yeah. Yes, I think that I think that too often we forget. I think that when a community endears themselves to a restaurant, the restaurant has to endear itself to the community. Corporate restaurants, and just the truth, corporate restaurants, they do things for the community, but they could, if they have 5 restaurants all over the state and so forth. They're not going to say, hey, Edwardsville, we're going to do so and so and so.
Right.
I think that corporate, privately owned restaurant, mom and dad restaurants, have the advantage, because I've seen it now with COVID. I've seen it now. People really want those restaurants to survive, and so what I do to make sure that we give back is that I include in our marketing budget give back. Some people make a marketing. Most restaurants, I would dare say, don't have a contribution bucket, but we have a contribution bucket that's mixed in advertising because it's a form of advertising. So that's the other thing. I think and privately owned restaurants, whether it's a restaurant or any kind of business, they have to visibly do things to give back to the community. We bought computers for Woodlawn School. Okay, 225 teachers at Edwardsville High School last year. In the middle of this whole thing, we took the food truck up and we fed them. The firemen in Edwardsville and the policemen, we fed them. A lot of people will say that's a little bit show, but it's not. What it is said in the community, you support us, so we're going to support you. And then people will find out that the customers will say, you know what, I want that restaurant to survive because they know how to give back to the community. Some of the other places are not going to do that. That's not in their corporate agenda to give back to the community. And finally, the other thing too is like, it's a necessary thing for me to do to survive, because unlike a restaurant that has like a business that has 5 restaurants in 6 places, we're not going to say, hey, that restaurant over in Edwardsville is not performing. Let's shut that down. No, I'm invested. I better know how to do only one thing, and that's win. Because I can't shut my restaurant down because some other place is performing better. You're metal. The fact that you have to stick to it and do more to make it win, that has to be obvious. And so that's why we do a community. We give away a lot of gift cards to churches, people that are raising money, people trying to do things to help the community out. We're there. We try to be a part of that.
What's the most important lesson you've learned from a mistake you've made, whether that's running the business or even going back to your days in the corporate world?
The probably is the lesson around people. I'm always excited and I'm always interested in people. I'll tell you this: the one thing I learned is that in the restaurant business, the people element is so critical. I've never seen a business that can either win or lose. I mean, literally win or lose based on the motivation of the people. What I call the want to factor. Okay, I mean, I can pay a guy $5 an hour, hypothetically. I can pay a person $20 an hour, hypothetically. And if the want to factor and that $5 guy is high, is there, he will produce and give back more than the $20 guy. Now, I'm not trying to say that how you're paid is not important, but what I'm trying to say is making people feel that they are a part of it is just it's unbelievable. And so I've stepped up my game quite a bit, and I think it's very important in privately owned businesses because in most cases, business owners for privately owned business we just have too much power, and power in the hands of not knowing how it's going to be used is a big deal. Or for example, you could be the best cook I have in my restaurant, and I can be an owner that can be moody sometimes. I'll come into work.
I can't believe that.
I'm in a bad mood. You come into work, you're in a bad mood. And privately owned businesses, mom and pop businesses, are the only one that can say to you, pack your stuff and go home.
Right.
In other businesses, in the corporate world, you could never do that because there's HR and so forth. So what I've learned is that at a time when, and I've had, come on, in my 17 years, I've had cooks to tell me where to go and whatever and so forth, but I've said,
Right.
okay. And so I said, at the moment, I said, well, listen, either you go back to work and we'll talk about this later or whatever, because the fact of the matter is I can't run the business right there without them. The other fact of the matter is that there needs to be a time when cooler heads need to prevail. So what I would say to privately owned businesses is like, just think it through. Try not to make a decision when you're upset,
Right.
okay? And also get that due diligence because people make your business what it is.
Great insight. Just to wrap up with a quick plug for Gulf Shores, if somebody would like to dine there, how can they do that?
Well, right. I mean, you can come anytime. We only take reservations for 6 or more, and we do accept large parties. Over at Creve Coeur, we will accept up to a party of 20. At Edwardsville, at Creve Coeur, it's up to 14. So because you're like that, we have a very nice patio in both places. We have live music. If you like your blues and so forth,
Right.
we have live music nights and so forth. We have theme nights and so forth. But we're a family oriented restaurant. And so just coming anytime. We don't take reservations for less than 6. If there's a wait, it's normally, it can be longer on Fridays, Saturdays, but it's a nominal wait.
Sure.
So good.
Well, Harry, I certainly appreciate the friendship, all you do for the community, and looking forward to new locations and further expansion of Gulf Shores.
Well, look, I appreciate it, and I would be remiss too because Gulf Shores has survived this. And we don't know what's going to happen next, but we've survived this far because the community has loved us, and I want the community to know that I appreciate and love them.
Harry, thanks for coming on. Appreciate
I
it.
appreciate it. Here, there.